Oh, hey, I'm Matthew Naimi. How did the recycling center start? Well, I had already been doing dumpsters for construction debris, and in order to compete with the big boys in town, you had to find a niche. And my niche was site-separated recycling of construction and demolition debris that I could do in this big facility that I was operating out of. That, I had stickers on my car that said recycling, and I was kind of the guy everybody would call when they had a question about certain types of things. And an energetic Wayne State student saw my car one evening, chased me down my driveway. I thought I was being mugged. I got out, and it turns out that she just wanted to start a recycling program for the neighborhood. So I told her to call me in the daylight. We gave her a card. We had a meeting at the Bronx bar. We decided that we were going to set up a recycling program on the day after the Dally in the Alley in 2005. We set up next to the Bronx bar, and we said recycle here on Saturday, and people showed up and they separated everything like we wanted them to, and people brought sandwiches for the crew, and some hippie brought a guitar and started playing, and it became kind of a neighborhood event. So we decided to do it every Saturday, once a month for the neighborhood, and just said recycle here on Saturday, second Saturday of every month. And the city took notice, the news kind of gave us some coverage, and the city of Detroit asked what we were doing to get people excited about recycling. We just said we made it cool. So they asked for a proposal to do a recycling program for the city of Detroit. Rather than just give them a proposal that we were doing, I went big, and I gave them a 10-year plan for curbside that started with a recycling drop-off and worked its way into the neighborhoods with pilot programs to determine where curbside would be effective, an education program. While the city didn't formally adopt that proposal, they did agree to fund the Recycle Here program in this facility. And in 2007, we opened our doors, January 4th, 2007. To date, we've recycled over 40 million pounds of material and been visited by over 1.1 million citizen visits. According to that 10-year plan, we were effectively able to get the city of Detroit to have its own municipal recycling program with trucks, blue bins, curbside recycling in 9 years. When we opened up the recycling program, we had a couple of rules. No money changes hands at our facility, because at the time Detroit was being scrapped. So we wanted to keep that element out of our facility, and we earmarked all proceeds to education. You know, you could actually educate the next generation through your trash. Also, if somebody wanted to reuse the material that we had, we would always let them take it, as long as they knew that if they were done with it, they had to bring it back. So with those rules in place, we opened our doors, and what happened was, something that was totally unexpected. First off, the city of Detroit was devoid of density. It still is, but at the time, it became kind of a gathering point. People started to see their neighbors and made an event. Every Saturday, they would show up and they would engage in conversation with our staff, which were just a bunch of hippies, musicians, and artists anyways, that were just hanging around looking for cool stuff for themselves. And they would see their neighbors that they haven't seen in a while. They would strike up a conversation. They would talk about doing other things. And then a lot of artists started to come in and ask for material to build art with. We also had a lot of big blank walls, and they would love to grace the walls for as a reward for people to come in there, also for their work to be seen. We really tapped into the graffiti crews of Detroit. I gave them a safe space to paint and really draw attention to our facility. It became a very big community event. People would go to bat to keep us around. So what we didn't realize that what we're trying to do is give people a recycling option. We actually started to build community through the trash. As far as Burning Man goes, there was actually a very specific moment in time where all the worlds kind of collided. Our staff here at Recycle Here, we like to call them the Gang Green. They're artists and musicians and general weirdos that were pretty much dialed in, but we'd all hang out and work, and then after work we would come up with weird ideas and do some fun stuff. Neil, one of our longtime employees who is still with us, and Dave, another guy who's still with us, one year just kept coming up with, stopping in my office beginning in January, like, hey, we want to do a party. I'm like, cool. And they're like, hey, we want to build a castle out of cardboard and pallets. I'm like, that sounds cool. Like, we want to fill box trucks full of musicians and do a noise show. I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. And then they're like, yeah. And then I got the Detroit Fire Collective coming by, and they're gonna spin fire. And then, oh, and I got a big bonfire pit, and we have all this stuff. So the party was called the Infinite Bells of Armageddon, and it was on the summer solstice in 2012. And that party was wild. Basically, all my normal friends, all of our recyclers, people in city government, they all got invited and they all showed up. The Theater Bazaar crew from Detroit came by and they brought some weird stuff. And then the Burning Man crew in Detroit showed up and they brought some stuff. One of the big things was we didn't spend any money, we built everything out of garbage, but we did buy $500 worth of fireworks. So when the place was packed and the noise was going and we had somebody screaming, we need medical attention on a loop through the microphone, and it started to get really crazy, we lit off all the fireworks at the exits. So people didn't realize, they thought they were trapped. And they were running over the hill to get out, and it was pretty wild. Then we lit everything on fire, and then the fire department showed up, and a brass band came out and played while the fire department put out and nobody would talk to anybody. So after that event, we kind of had like really cemented our place amongst all the other weirdos of Detroit as our own specific brand of weird. Some of the longtime Burning Man people were telling me, wow, that was the most unsafe thing I've ever been a part of. That's when we're like, oh. And from that party, I got invited to actually go to Burning Man, which is awesome. And I've met a lot of artists, a lot of people, a lot of connections, and brought it back to Detroit. They're always welcome. We give them places to stay. A lot of people have moved here. And one thing is, Burning Man's a great place to meet and network and do art. But if you really want to do fun and wild and crazy shit, Burning Man has way more rules than Detroit. At that first party that I was talking about earlier, the Infinite Bells of Armageddon, there was an artist who had moved here a couple years before, and his name's Ryan Doyle. He specializes in building giant art cars. I had never been to Burning Man. I didn't really know what an art car was. And he came by and he's like, hey, do you think I could store my dragon here? And I was like, yeah, I got space. I had no idea what it looked like. It was like a Tuesday night, and I had the back door, garage door open, and I was waiting, and this 70-foot long, 40-foot tall, just monstrosity of art came rolling around the corner, shooting fire, and the flamethrower goes off, and somebody with a forklift pulls the top off, and it pulls in, and about 30 people pile out of it. That was the dragon. It was called Don Corinne. It was built by Ryan Doyle. So I stored it here, and it was kind of the dragon's lair. I was like the landlord of the dragon for a while. The cool thing about, having an art car in Detroit is some of our lack of enforcement. If you're not hurting anybody, you can get away with a lot, especially if you know what you're talking about when you do talk to law enforcement. And we befriended a lot in the fire department and whatnot with a lot of our antics. But back in 2013, when Detroit was the largest municipality, the first municipality, I believe, to actually file for bankruptcy, there was a debate raging in the papers. Basically, it was the pensions versus the art collection, right? It's like we need to sell the art collection to pay for the pensions. Nobody really asked an artist's point of view. So we had the opportunity to make a statement. We also had a 70-foot fire-breathing dragon, and we know a lot of people in the media. One evening, we gathered as many people we knew that were in the local media. We had people from the New York Times, Detroit Free Press, you name it. They were invited down to the recycling center, and we put them on the dragon. Doyle had fashioned a sign that said #SaveTheArt out of the wire that makes up political signs. We wrapped it in rags and soaked it in kerosene. And we drove down Woodward Avenue, pulled up on the lawn of the DIA, put it in, and lit it on fire, the fire-breathing dragon, and said hashtag save the art. We did get pulled over. They threatened to charge us with arson, but they ended up letting us go because we left somebody there with a fire extinguisher. That story and those visuals got picked up by the New York Times. Rachel Maddow ran a big article, best thing in the world. And it is kind of what led to the grand bargain, where it wasn't about art versus the pensions. There was a third party there, it's banks, okay? And somebody needed to realize that the art wasn't just the only collateral to pay the pensions. The banks were involved right there, and somebody could take a haircut as well. So it kind of changed that, and then the foundation community stepped up, protected Detroit's art for all the citizens of Detroit. The pensioners got, hopefully they got as good a deal as possible, and the banks took a haircut, and all we did was have a good night out on the Dragon. But we were able to make a statement. So that, and then we've had the cockroach car, we built a lot of neat things, and to be in an old auto factory, which is what our site is, the original Lincoln factory, and to be able to make art cars out of here and really engage with people and teach them different things like how to weld and paint and upholster and work on vehicles, and then use those vehicles for fun and education is something that we're really proud of over here. The new building is the old building, and the old building is a really old building. This facility is the original Lincoln Motor Company. So Henry Leland, the man who created Cadillac, also left Cadillac and General Motors and set up shop here to create the Liberty aircraft engine for World War I. And after the war, he shifted production to the Lincoln automobile. And then it was bought out by Henry Ford. It had many lives. It was a grocery wholesaler, became a part of my family's business with my father and his brothers. And then that was Metro Grocery. And then when that project ended, it kind of sat fallow until I graduated college. And then I set up shop here and tried to figure out what to do with an old auto factory. In Detroit, there's a lot of them. So I've had music studios in here. We have the recycling program that we created out of here. We created a thing called the Lincoln Street Art Park that was kind of use of space and to get people from not dumping. And then, in 2017, at the height of kind of like where our art was going and what was going on, we kind of had a tragedy here. A good friend passed away while he was painting a mural on the roof. And that forced us all to kind of take a step back and shift our focus because if the building wasn't going to be safe and people were going to get hurt, we had to find a way to actually stabilize the foundation so that we built upon that would be stable. What we've created, kind of using all the successes of the other projects that I've created or been a part of, was Dream Troy. We were able to get historic credits to take this footprint of this project or property back to the 1922 birth of Lincoln Motors. We were able to save and relocate and modernize the recycle gear program in another area of the building. We were able to locate a fabrication and art warehouse where the old recycling center was, and we demolished about 80% of the actual footprint we had. The rest of the building is now affordable housing for anyone, but specifically targeted to artists. So the whole property is affordable housing. Rent is all determined by your income, and if you make too much money, you can't live here. It's also a 24-hour noise zone, so there's no quiet hours. So it's really geared to musicians and artists that work, not a traditional 9 to 5 and might be working on things around the clock. It has a venue called the Freezer, which is an open-air graffiti museum. We maintain the art park. We're home to Michigan and Trumbull Pizza. We have a little store and market, a flower shop, and the Marble Bar is opening up a larger venue on property called the Lincoln Factory that'll be a 1,000-seat venue for weddings as well as larger concerts. But the challenge was, like in 2017, we didn't know what we were doing. I have a business partner who stepped up to help navigate, this transition. His name is Orrin Goldenberg. He's a filmmaker, and I'm a garbage man who likes to build flamethrowers. So to try to tackle a redevelopment or development project of this size with really no knowledge of how to do it, we kind of like treated it as an art project. But we didn't know what we were doing. We wanted to find a use that would allow us to continue to do our crazy, cool, and fun stuff. Housing kind of wasn't what we were thinking. So it took us a couple years to realize that we could possibly do housing to take care of our community. That was around 2019. We finally got a plan forward, started to access the different programs and try to figure out that. And then obviously we know in 2020, we broke ground in February of 2020. In March of 2020, everything kind of got shut down with the pandemic, COVID pandemic, which made everything kind of a little weird to get projects done, but we were able to navigate that. In 2021, I got diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I had 40 days to get my life in order because I was 70% chance of never walking or talking again. And I came out of that pretty much fine. So we did that, and then obviously with delays and cost increases, it's been a very difficult project, but we were able to get our certificate of occupancy in 2023. So it was a 6-year project with a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but we were able to scale the mountain, so to speak, and deliver something very unique to the community. Yeah, the prop was actually done by a great artist friend, Enola Gay. He's one of our artists in residence here. It's for my birthday. Most of my projects and everything I do, I try to bring people together. So the initial shock of what the pandemic did, is of keeping people apart, was kind of very hard for me to take. I had a flamethrower that was built for Burning Man by myself and another artist named Larry. They wouldn't let us shoot it off at Burning Man. It was kind of too big. So it kind of sat here. We shot it off a couple times, but it was just sitting in the shop. Once we got shut down, I was just kicking around the shop, and I decided to drag it out, and that was a whole ordeal because it's really big. But I laid it on its side, and I pulled it up, and I set it up. The flamethrower itself was built out of the fire suppression system from the old Cadillac plant that burned down. And this particular part of the fire system didn't work. So we had nicknamed it the Death of the American Dream. And I kind of, thought that was apropos with what was going on in the world and what was going on with the pandemic. I decided to give myself something to do. Every night at midnight, I would come up here and shoot it off. And I called it Midnight in America with the Death of the American Dream. And I would just say what day it was of me doing it. And I would, tell a story or do an inspirational quote. And then I would tell everybody to make today a better day. And then I would basically tell them to do something like call their mom or take a bath or do something fun. And I was able to do that for, I wanted to do it till we reopened. When we reopened, it was during the George Floyd race, Black Lives Matter movement. And I had a platform. People were tuning in every night. People were letting me know they were enjoying it. So I kept it going, and I decided to try to get to 100 days. And on the 100th day, I had everybody, because I was doing special guests, and I had musical numbers, and it turned into a pretty fun thing. But after I got to 100 and I brought everybody back for that kind of thing, I did one more night, 101 night, and that kind of was for me. And the flamethrower itself was designed to be lifted up on a high-low and shot from the air. And we had never done it. So on night 101, I climbed on to it, and we found the biggest high-low we had laying around. And I went up 55 feet in the air, no safety strap, and I shot a flamethrower off and told everybody to make artwork, which is an nonprofit. So that was a lot of fun. And, obviously I kind of did it for me, to give me something to look forward to every day. 3 years on, I see people wherever I go, and somebody will come up to me and you're the guy with the flamethrower, thank you. Give me something to look forward to every day. I would tune in, or I'd watch it in the morning. And then there was an art gallery that compiled them all, and it's an hour-and-a-half YouTube of me shooting flamethrowers off 101 times. People have heard about TED and TEDx, where you get to talk about something cool. I was asked continually to do something, and they always want you to have a new idea. One time, we were writing a little graffiti and staying up late and, doing hood rat stuff. We had just finished painting a big share your candy. It's something I used to write because, it sounds fun. And I got a call that morning asking me if I wanted to do a TEDx for Detroit. And I was like, sure, got a great idea. Call it Share Your Candy. So they said, yes, you're going to do a 6-minute thing. And it was in a month. I kind of got to thinking, I was able to kind of put everything in my philosophy on how we've been able to grow everything here on Holden Street into an essay entitled Share Your Candy. And more or less, like, share your candy is like the first thing you're taught is to share. And then one of the big times you have to share is Halloween, right? It's share your candy, right? You get a bottle of candy, you're fighting with your brothers and sisters, whatever, and your parents will yell, share your candy. And then systematically, life gets in the way of those early lessons, and you're taught to basically greed is good and to worry about yourself and kind of forget about others. And I firmly believe that because of the way the art park, the recycling program grew, there's no reward. The reward is intangible, right? You're not recycling to change the weather, right? You're recycling because you think that the more you do, the more people do, it's going to be a long-term goal. The way the art park is you don't put art there for pay. You put art there so maybe somebody else will be inspired. You're sharing your candy. Your candy is your talents. And if everybody learned to just share their candy more, the world would be a better place. So that's kind of our motto here, is to share your candy, share what you have with others. It's done pretty well for what we're trying to do. You got it tattooed on me and move on. Everybody is invited to come down to view what we've created. Obviously, the recycling program is open to everybody, and that's Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. But the art park is always open. That's at 5960 Lincoln Street. And then Dream Detroit, which is our big project, which is the complex that's here, is located at 1331 Holden Street. Now, you can access most of the art on the property if you just walk around and follow. We have an open campus. Doors that are locked for a reason, but you can access almost all of the art by walking in off the street and taking a look. So please come down and see local and national artists' art, and we continually add to what's around here. Yeah, we welcome everybody. Yeah, obviously it's the hardest. It was the most complicated financial transaction in Detroit history. Mayor Duggan came by before he did the Mackinac Policy Conference this year, and he was talking about hard to finance projects and what your capital stack looked like. And I tattooed the capital stack on my arm when I found out, and so I whipped it out, and it's right there. It's that whole thing, the 29 separate loans to get one project done. And he used that in his speech because I guess nobody else tattoos day of funding charts on their arm. It probably wouldn't have got done if we knew what we were doing, and if we didn't treat it like an art project. If you're only driven by bottom line decisions, you're only going to do things that are proven to make money, not change the status quo. So, when people are like, oh, you can't build affordable housing, I'm like, yes, you can. You just can't make a pile of money doing it. So maybe sacrifice. So should two fairly broke artists and a garbage man be the ones that are building affordable housing? No. It probably should be the way the municipalities and foundations do it. We always thought that there'd be room in the capital stack for a foundation to chip in with their program-related investment or something along those lines. And because it hadn't been done before, we found no takers. But now that we've done this project, we have shown that this is feasible. This is a way to do it. And now it can be a case study for other institutions to build affordable housing and tailor things to a community such as the 24-hour economy, which is not just rave parties and illicit shit. It's hospitals and people that don't work 9-to-5 jobs, people that serve you in your 9-to-5 when you eat dinner and you go to entertainment. Where do they go after work? They should have a place to go. They can come to a place like this. If you work at a hospital and your shift ends at 4 o'clock in the morning, you can get a decent meal, not just a count coney. You have a place to work out 24 hours a day. that's something that people need to address, and hopefully we'll be able to show that. My tagline in that Share Your Candy that I didn't say earlier is, if you build it, they will come, but if they build it, they'll stay. And that's the thing, is everybody that adds art or puts in sculpture here, they take ownership of the place. They'll bring people by to not only look at their space, but also say that I'm a part of this and something bigger. So when people support the recycling program or support the art park or come to an event, a free event, you know, and they thank us for doing it, you like go out in your community and do it or support, you know, the project. So, you know, we did start a nonprofit called Make Art Work. Whenever we were trying to approach the nonprofit industrial complex as it is in Detroit, you know, they're like, well, we don't even know what you do. We don't even know how to fund you. I was able to create this Make Art Work nonprofit because we make artwork. When artists come here, they're sure there's an artist that has ideas and wants to do things, but there's also people that help drive that art or drive the high-low or help and assist, and those people are usually forgotten. They may be compensated, they may be doing it for experience, but nobody really takes care of them. And then Make Art Work is something that not only is it here, we can provide housing, we can provide apprenticeship opportunities, and then we can also, you know, put money back into the artists that have supported us and assist with equipment rentals and all kinds of things. And that's what we do here at Make Art. There was a program that we were looking to set up with Midtown. They had done that like Live, Play Detroit stuff. If you worked in Detroit, you got a discount to live. And we wanted to do an art-based one. And that would have been something where there would be a set aside of some units, and then that kind of program could be evaluated. But because we're a fully, you know, certified affordable housing project, we can't use that kind of criteria to determine who can and can't live here. Our process for admitting people or allowing people to live here is determined solely on need-based, and that's need for income. If you don't make enough money, you can't pay the rent, you can't live here. We have set-aside units that are cheap, but you still have to show some income, and then your income level will determine what your rent is. So 50% of our units in this facility, we have 76, so 50% of those are for people who make less than 50% of the AMI or make less than $30-some thousand a year. And then an additional 25% or 50% of the remaining units, or 25%, are for people who make less than 80% of the AMI. And then all remaining units are for people that make less than 120% AMI, which is workforce housing. The AMI right now is, I think, $68,000 a year. So if you make more than 72, you're not allowed to live here. You have 80% market rate, 20% set aside that for people that make below 80. Ours is completely affordable and highly targeted affordability component. And we thought that would be what we would need to take care of the community that would want to live in this environment. As of right now, which is the end of 2023, we're at 75% occupancy, and our commercial is 100% occupied. So we still have some units available for people that are in need of income-based housing.